So my name is Catherine, and I started working in radio in 2001. Before that, I studied at Pretoria Tech, where I studied lighting and sound, and then just happened to fall into radio. And I know it's terrible for people that are so desperate to get into radio to hear that, because it wasn't something that I was interested in, it wasn't something that I'd thought about, and I just happened to fall in, luckily, into this amazing medium. And I started at 5FM in 2001 with the breakfast show host, and I started producing the show. And at that stage, 5FM was in a place of, they'd been trying for a very long time to change from this rock station, a very white rock station, and they were trying to be more a youth station where it was loads of different music. So it was an amazing place to be in, but it was heavily male driven. And so I started producing the breakfast show, and they wanted a female on the show. Now bear in mind, I wasn't interested in being on radio. It wasn't a thing. I was like there to do content, and I was there to produce this show. And it was very, like, all of the people on that breakfast show were all males. So they interviewed a few people, a few females, to be on the show. And eventually the host said, I'm actually just going to put Catherine on. So she's obviously a female. She's a single mom. She's young. I was young then. And I was really into music, especially local music. When I was younger at school, I would go and watch bands, and it was really a big thing for me. So I sort of ticked all of the boxes in terms of what they wanted in someone female on the show. And I think the reason that it worked so well is because I perhaps hadn't trained to be on radio. I was just a real normal girl that spoke about my problems, I spoke about my issues, I spoke about silly stories, and it resonated with the listener. And so I started this magical career, and I was still producing the show and being on air, and then Mark Gilman was leaving. He was the breakfast show host, and Fresh was joining in the afternoon. Now, I didn't even know that Fresh knew who I was. And he asked for me to produce his show, which was mind-blowing and absolutely incredible. And I started this magnificently beautiful journey with DJ Fresh. And we were on this afternoon drive show that I still think to this day is probably one of the best radio shows ever. And I know I'm biased, but we pushed boundaries. We spoke about a lot of things. It wasn't just entertainment. We spoke about hardcore topics. We got our listeners involved. We had a magnificent team where we all had different opinions and different ideas, and I think that that is so important when it comes to radio. And so I started this journey with DJ Fresh, and then we moved to the breakfast show. And at the same time, I'd started lecturing at Boston Media House, and I see a few of my students here, which just makes me so happy, and I might start crying later because I miss them terribly. And I started this magnificent journey of teaching at the same time. And I remember one day teaching in class about this thing called burnout. So now you get two different types of burnout. You obviously get a physical burnout when you work too hard and your body gives in. But you also get a creative burnout. And I had realized within the last 2 years of working with Fresh, that I wasn't creatively giving my best. I would come into work, I would do my thing, I knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was giving anything more. And I eventually had to reach that point where I said to him, listen, I think that you need a new producer on this show, because you need someone that's going to give you more than what I'm giving you. And I spoke to 5FM and I said, please give me another show to work on. Bear in mind, Fresh and I, it was the most incredible team. I did not want to leave working with Fresh. But I also had to be 100% honest that I just creatively wasn't giving my best. So they moved me to another show with the Shady Lurker, which was also absolutely amazing to work on because he is like a firehouse. And he needed someone that could steer him in the right direction. Because if you do know Warwick, the Shady Lurker, he says things before thinking about it. So it was an amazing year of working with someone that was completely different to Fresh. But then I also had to realize that it didn't matter that I'd moved to a different show, that I was working with someone else. I still creatively was not giving 100% to producing a radio show. And single mom, 3 kids, and I had to make this decision that I had to leave. I had to actually go and try and do something else to get my creativity back, to get my excitement back in working. And because when you work in radio, obviously you're doing a radio show, so you're working 3 to 5 hours a day. If you're a content producer, you're always looking for content, but you can freelance and you can do other things. So I was freelancing as a content social media producer, where we go out and we film different events, and I would do sideline interviews. So I was doing other things. And I thought to myself, if I leave 5FM, then I can do this all the time, and I can choose what I want to work on. And it was very exciting at the beginning. I had loads of work, I was making money, and I was free sailing. And then suddenly budgets are being cut, and the work is less and less. And the fact is that single mom, 3 kids, I've got lots of bills to pay. I've got school fees to pay. I've got a house, etc. I've got food. It's not just me I'm looking after. And I started taking money that I should have been paying here to try and pay this, but then that's spiraling out of control, and then this is spiraling out of control. And so I decided I'm going to start sending my CV out. So I put myself out on every single biz community. I'm searching every single day for jobs. Bear in mind, I have been working at a high-profile radio station where I have built a brand. I am a brand. I have my own opinion. I know who I am. I stand for something. People know who I am, is what I thought. And I'm sending my CV out. Nothing. Not a response. Not you too qualified. Nothing. And can I tell you, at the age of 40, this was the most depressing thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. Because how could they not look at that CV? I worked with DJ Fresh, for goodness sake. I was just respond. I'm qualified for the job. And so it spiraled to the point where I remember at one stage, my kids had gone to my folks on holiday, so I was alone at home. No freelance work. No one responding to my emails. And I think I stayed in my pajamas for 5 days. I would get up, obviously go to the toilet, occasionally make myself something to eat, but just lie there, watching Netflix, checking my mails. Maybe someone's mailed me, maybe there's some work coming. Absolutely nothing. And I have to say I was very lucky in the fact that I do have children, because I knew that in 5 days' time I had to get in my car and drive down to KZN to go and fetch them and bring them back. And then I had to have my shit together. So I allowed myself to wallow in that depression for 5 days. But to be honest, I probably would still, well, I wouldn't be there because I had no money to pay for them in the house. I would have been out in the street. But I would have stayed there. I would have stayed in that bed, hoping and praying that something was going to happen. But nothing was happening. And then I heard about a job through a friend whose friend applied for the job. And I knew the guy that owned the company. So it's an audio company. They compose music for ads, and they do final mix. And I was like, I've been in music. I know what I'm doing. And I phoned him and I said to him, tell me about this job. And he gave me all the specs, and I was like, I have to get this job because I cannot freelance anymore. I'm going to spiral out of control in terms of debt, in terms of trying to pay for things. I have to actually get a permanent job. And it was really soul destroying because I really wanted to freelance. I loved working for different people. I loved working for different companies, doing different things. And he said all of the specs on the job, and half of them I didn't know what he was talking about, and I just said to him, I've just ticked all your boxes. I'm the person that you need to hire for this job. And he started laughing at me, and he's like, Cath, I'm getting on a plane to go to London. When I come back, let's meet. And I said, okay, great. So I waited for him to get back, and I had a Skype call with him, and honestly, I really bullshitted my way through that interview. I knew I was going to be amazing at this job. And that's all that mattered. I could learn all the other stuff. I had the basics of production, so it didn't really that didn't stress me out, but I'd never worked in advertising and commercials and any of that. And I remember him asking me, what would I bring? And I said, what would I bring when I walked in that door? And I said to him, good energy. I'm sure that's not the answer that he was looking for. But he was like, no one has ever said that, and that's what we actually need. And I got the job, and so I have now been at a permanent job for the last year. I have learned so much. I failed maths at school. I have now been doing quotes and working out percentages for licensing and usage and whatnot. But everything that I've learned over the years has culminated in me now working here. And the reason that I'm telling you this whole long journey is the fact that I know for a fact that everyone's sitting here. Some of you might have amazing opportunities, but a lot of you are desperate to break into the scene, desperate to try and get a job. I get messages from my students constantly about the fact that they can't break into the industry. And how do they break into the industry? And I want to tell you that at the age of 40, I went through exactly the same thing with all of the experience.